Welcome to my channel Buzz. Have you ever thought about what it really costs to be one of the most famous actors in the whole world? We see the red carpets, the fancy movie openings, the magazine covers, and the big movies. But we hardly ever think about what's happening behind the scenes. Johnny Depp recently said something that makes you look at it all in a new way. He says fame didn't just change his life, it almost destroyed it. That's a big statement, and when you think about it, it's shocking because for many years Depp has been the face of Hollywood success, but he says the price that came with it was so heavy, it nearly ate him up completely. Now, if you've been following the ups and downs of Johnny's life, you know he's had some of the highest highs and some of the lowest lows in public view. From being a heartthrob of the 90s, to becoming Captain Jack Sparrow, to getting wrapped up in endless court cases, his journey has never been normal. And if you felt like the drama around him never seems to end, you're definitely not the only one. But what's interesting now is that Johnny himself is finally opening up. He's pulling back the curtain on what fame really did to him, what it took out of him, and how he's managed to keep standing through it all. So, let's go back a little bit. Imagine being in your early 20s, suddenly landing roles that shoot you, from being just another struggling musician and actor to becoming the face that every teenager had on their bedroom wall. That was Johnny's reality when he burst onto the scene with shows like 21 Jump Street. Overnight, he went from being unknown to heartthrob. And at first, that kind of attention can feel amazing. Everyone knows your name. Everyone wants a piece of you. But Depp has said that from the very beginning, fame felt weird to him. He wasn't chasing stardom in the way so many actors do. In fact, he once said he never even wanted to be a movie star. He wanted to make music. He wanted to tell stories, but he didn't want the chaos that came with celebrity culture. And yet, chaos is exactly what he got. By the time the world saw him as Edward Scissorhands in the early 90s, his face was everywhere. His image was carefully shaped into this bad boy outsider figure. The kind of character Hollywood loves to sell. Fans loved it. Studios made money on it. But for Johnny, that image started to feel like a prison. He's compared it to being eaten alive. Fame didn't just follow him, it swallowed him whole. He once described the feeling as if he was slowly losing pieces of himself, because the person he was in private never seemed to match the person everyone thought he was in public. Think about it. You can't grab a coffee without 20 cameras flashing. You can't walk down the street without someone shouting your name. You start to wonder, do people like you for you, or do they just like the idea of you that they've built in their heads? That kind of pressure is something most of us will never experience, and yet it's a reality for every superstar. Depp has said that he often questioned the reasons of those around him. Was that friend really a friend, or were they hanging on because of what came with being close to him? Was that romantic partner with him for love, or for access to the lifestyle? It's a worry that fame creates, and the tabloids made it worse. Throughout the 90s and 2000s, Johnny was painted in headlines as a rebel, a troublemaker sometimes, even a mess. They highlighted every fight, every breakup, every late-night incident. Rarely did they highlight the man behind it all, the artist, the father, the person who actually cared deeply about his work. The media wanted the cartoon version because the cartoon version sold magazines. And for Johnny, living with that constant twisting was tiring. Here's a common wrong idea. People often think celebrities love the spotlight 24/7. They imagine that once you're rich and famous, you're living the dream. But Johnny's story proves that the dream can sometimes feel more like a nightmare. Fame opens doors. Sure, it gives you opportunities, wealth, influence, but it also locks you inside a cage. Every move you make is looked at, judged, and twisted. And the scariest part is when you start to believe the stories people write about you. Depp once said that this is the most dangerous part of being famous, when the lies start to seep in and you forget who you actually are. So, how did he deal with it all? Well, not always in the healthiest ways. Depp has been open about the fact that at his lowest points he spiraled into habits that weren't good for him. He isolated himself. He battled self-doubt. He turned to things that gave him temporary escape, but didn't really solve the problem. That's the sad irony of fame. It gives you everything people think they want, but it leaves you lonelier than ever. But eventually, Johnny realized he couldn't keep living that way. He needed to step back, refocus, and stop letting Hollywood decide his worth. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Most fans don't know this, but insiders in Hollywood have said that Depp was often pressured by studios to keep up that bad boy image. They wanted him to be wild, unpredictable, edgy, because that sold tickets. But Johnny has said that this wasn't really who he was. Yes, he had a rebellious streak, but he wasn't the self-destructive cartoon they wanted to sell. Yet, the machine of Hollywood kept pushing it. Imagine how hard it must be when your real self and your public self are constantly at war. And psychologists will tell you fame like this can trigger identity crisis. It can create addiction. It can make you feel completely disconnected from reality. In Depp's case, all of this pressure was made worse by the legal battles and public scandals that took over his life in recent years. Every headline seemed to twist his story further until it felt like people weren't even talking about the same person anymore. They were talking about some larger-than-life figure that had nothing to do with the man himself. But here's the part that surprises people. Instead of letting this destroy him, Johnny slowly started to shift. He began choosing projects that inspired him instead of ones that would just make money. He leaned into indie films, artistic collaborations, and music, his first love. He stepped away from Hollywood's expectations and focused on what made him feel human again. And in some of his recent interviews, he's been brutally honest. He said that his toughest battles weren't really against the studios or the tabloids. They were with himself. That kind of honesty is rare in Hollywood. Most stars want to maintain the perfect illusion, but Johnny has learned that being vulnerable connects more than perfection ever could. Fans see him not as an untouchable icon anymore, but as a flawed human being who stumbled, who fell, but who kept getting back up again. When you think about it, that's not an easy thing for someone like Johnny Depp to admit. For decades, he was the symbol of mystery and control, the actor who could vanish into any role and still walk away with his cool persona intact. To say, actually, I was my own worst enemy, takes a kind of humility that most celebrities never allow themselves to show. In an industry built on image, it's almost unheard of for someone at his level to tear down their own mask. Yet, that's exactly what Depp has chosen to do. What makes this honesty so powerful is the timing. He's speaking about it after years of public scrutiny when his name was dragged through tabloids, courtrooms, and online debates that often painted him as a cartoon of himself. Most people in his position would have doubled down, tried to polish their reputation, or pretended that none of it affected them. But Depp didn't. Instead, he admitted that he wasn't always okay, that he often struggled with doubts, and that the person the world thought they knew wasn't the full story. That admission resonates because it strips away the myth of being unbeatable that often surrounds celebrities. Fans, in turn, responded with a different kind of loyalty. They didn't just admire him for the characters he played. They respected him for admitting he was human. For many, it was comforting to know that someone with all the fame, money, and talent in the world could still wrestle with the same inner battles they do. Questions of identity, self-worth, and purpose. His being vulnerable created a bridge between him and the public, a reminder that no amount of success can erase the struggles we all face inside. There's also a deeper layer to this. Hollywood has long operated like a machine that rewards perfection and punishes imperfection. Actors are expected to smile, pose, and stay on brand. Any sign of weakness is often exploited. So when Johnny opened up about his private struggles, he wasn't just speaking for himself. He was challenging the entire system. He was saying, you don't have to pretend to be perfect to matter. That's an incredibly bold stance, especially for someone who has lived under the constant magnifying glass of global fame. It also reframes his legacy. Instead of being remembered only as the quirky star of Pirates of the Caribbean or the eccentric outsider of Tim Burton films, he's now being remembered as someone who showed courage by admitting the truth. Being vulnerable, after all, is a different kind of strength. It's not about how many times you win. It's about how many times you're willing to rise after falling. And for Johnny Depp, that toughness may end up being the most defining role of his life. Think about it for a moment. When we talk about legacy, especially in Hollywood, the conversation almost always revolves around filmography, awards, and box office numbers. How many Oscars did they win? How many billions did their movies make? But Johnny's story shifts that idea. His legacy isn't just tied to the characters he brought to life, but to the human being behind them who refused to be broken. That's something much harder to measure, but far more impactful. When fans look back at his career decades from now, they won't only remember Captain Jack Sparrow's swagger or Edward Scissorhands' silent sadness. They'll remember the man who walked through fire in real life and somehow came out, the other side still standing. Toughness is powerful because it speaks to everyone. Not everyone has $1 billion franchise under their belt, but everyone knows what it's like to fall down, to make mistakes, to be misunderstood, or to feel crushed under the weight of expectations. By openly sharing his struggles and his recovery, Johnny has given people something far more valuable than entertainment. He's given them hope. He's living proof that even when the world turns against you, even when the headlines are cruel and the spotlight feels suffocating, you can still find a way to rise again. And what's remarkable is that this toughness didn't come from a place of denial. He didn't try to act like nothing had ever gone wrong. He acknowledged the pain, the failures, the missteps. He owned his imperfections. In an industry that constantly demands polish and perfection, that honesty stands out. It humanizes him. It makes him not just a star on a screen, but a man who fought through storms that many thought would end him. That battle, that refusal to stay down, could very well be what cements him as one of the most relatable icons of our time. It also changes how people view the characters he's played. When you rewatch Jack Sparrow now, knowing the struggles Depp has faced, there's an added depth to the performance. You see not just the eccentric pirate, but a reflection of a man who knows what it's like to navigate chaos, to balance on the edge of destruction, and still find humor in the madness. When you see his quieter roles, the sensitivity and being vulnerable shine through even more because you know they weren't just performances, they were parts of himself that he allowed to seep onto the screen. In many ways, this openness has made him larger than his roles. It has turned him into a symbol of survival, of toughness in the face of relentless pressure. For someone who once felt consumed by fame, it's almost poetic that by embracing being vulnerable, he's managed to redefine what fame means for him. Not just the applause, not just the headlines, but the ability to inspire through honesty. And maybe that more than any award or franchise is the legacy that will endure. It's worth noting, too, that Depp is far from the only star who's been through this. Think of artists like Britney Spears, Michael Jackson, even modern stars like Justin Bieber. Fame at that level always comes with a dark side. But what makes Depp's story unique is how openly he's begun talking about it, almost warning others of what it can do. And as for what's next, he's making it clear that he doesn't want to play the Hollywood game anymore. He wants to do personal projects, art, music, films that matter to him, not films that are engineered for box office numbers. That's a huge change from the days when every move he made was a performance for the industry. Now he's reclaiming his narrative. And this leaves us with an important question. Do you think Johnny Depp's honesty about the dark side of Hollywood will actually change how the industry treats its stars? Or is it just going to keep repeating the same cycle, building people up, tearing them down, and then building them up again? It's a cycle we've seen over and over, and yet it doesn't seem to stop. So what do you think? Is Johnny's story a turning point or just another cautionary tale? Share your thoughts, because this conversation is bigger than one actor. It's about how fame itself shapes and sometimes destroys the people at the center of it. And if you found this story eye-opening, you'll definitely want to dive into the one where we talk about how Johnny nearly walked away from acting completely. It's another side of his journey that will make you look at him in a whole new light. If you enjoyed hanging out today, don't forget to give this a like. It helps so much more than you think. And if you want to keep following the wild, heartbreaking, and sometimes inspiring stories behind the celebrities we think we know, hit that subscribe button. At the end of the day, Johnny's story reminds us of something powerful. Sometimes the biggest battles don't happen on the screen or even in the courtroom. They happen quietly behind the bright lights inside the very people we assume are living perfect lives. Fame may look shiny on the outside, but as Johnny Depp himself says, it almost devoured him whole.